Good evening, everyone. On behalf of the Wednesdays for Water, an initiative started by the W4W Foundation, which is a think tank built by the Citizen Collective, we invite you for another session. Today's session is on lakes, and usually we want to know what we can do or could do to make the lakes survive. But today we discuss the things that we should not be doing to help the survival of lakes. We are glad to hear from Mansee Bal Bhargava today as the keynote speaker. We all have seen her numerous times on this hosting sessions on this platform. But today we take the privilege of learning from her wisdom about water, in particularly about the lakes. The conversation with her will be taken ahead by Akshay Anand, the moderator for today's session. Akshay Anand is an architect and urban specialist with over 10 years of experience as a geospatialist expert. He works mainly on water urbanism and the application of geoinformation science in water studies. He's currently pursuing the doctoral studies in ITC Netherlands on the governability of peri-urban lakes, focusing on ecological and social dynamics of governance. So I hereby invite Akshay Anand to take the conversation ahead with Mansee ma'am, and please make us more aware of how to make the lake survive around us. Thank you.
We are not hearing you, Akshay, okay? I think we were hearing you.
Am I audible now?
Now you are audible.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, but I'm not able to hear you guys. So maybe somebody unmuted me, unmute me, or unmuted me.
Are you hearing us now?
Can you check, Megha, if it is audible? Or
We hear you.
Okay, great. Now I can hear you. Yes. So
Okay.
thank you, Megha, for giving this introduction. Sorry for that glitch, but let us begin with the introduction of Professor Mansee Bal, that we know each other from a common subject. And I referred her thesis back in the days when she was doing her PhD, and I took a lot of lead from what she did on lakes and her studies in the PhD. So today we're going to ask some difficult questions to Professor Mansee, and let's see how we can bring this interesting discussion on what not to do in lakes. So in order to make it more lively and interactive, I would like to ask some questions before we begin, and then we follow what it comes out of it, that what you already have some ideas, and then Professor Mansee can build on the discussion. So can I share my screen? If you can make me a moderator, Megha, then I will be able to share the screen.
I think you should be able to share it because you are the co-host, and all participants can share.
It does not show me the option to share the screen here. Oh yes, now I see. So to begin with, I would like to share this So from your mobile phones, you can enter this code and answer this very basic question, that what is the basic difference between a pond, wetland, and a lake? What do you think it is? And explain that into like some words, and then we can see also on the screen.
Thank you, Akshay, that you're not asking me this question. I'm really saved.
Yes,
For
yes.
all
No,
of
but
you, by the way, it's for all the participants and not me.
yes, and then we'll ask the question later to Mansee Bal, how people have ideas, and then we can build on that.
Akshay, one request. Could you please copy the link and the code on and in the chat and share that?
Oh yes, sure, we can do that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So how do we see the answers, Akshay?
Yes.
I'm
So the
curious
answers,
now.
yeah, people are still, I think, responding. So we'll see it in a minute. Yes. Now we see the image answers. So one person has responded. So if more people respond, then we will see the answers here and coming as a text boxes.
Only we should have given them a disclaimer that today they have to speak more.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, and then this is an idea that we also get to know that from our diverse speaker, that a lot of people has some idea, but because of this distinction of the definition that what do we call a pond, what do we call a wetland, and what do we call a lake, is also very unclear. It's gray. So let us hear from our audience that what do they think? What is the difference? You don't have to be like, but what do you think it is? It's just a perception-based study, not a clear academic definition, but. Three people have responded, and then more people are responding. So it's amount of plant life in it, distance between pond and the lake, difference between pond and lake in size. So we can say there is a differences in the sizes. Pond is smaller water bodies compared to the lake. The lake is deeper. So based on size, depth, scale, resources. Okay, what it's surrounded by. Okay, the size of the water body. So basically, we have shallow, yes, shallow in nature. Wetlands are marshy. Wetlands are a mix of water, land, and soil and marshy. Yes. So basically, we are trying to understand that on the physical dimension of the lakes, how deep it is, what it is surrounded by, what it is the function, supporting diverse lifestyles.
Good to see everyone responded, huh? Interesting.
Yeah. Nice. We can wait for a couple of seconds and then we can ask Mansee Bal the question or move to the next question. Great. Lakes may be man-made. Wetland is a natural process that is also very interesting. And also, there is something which we can also discuss on this later with Professor Mansee Bal. Okay. Size, lake can be a wetland. Size, amount of vegetation. Yes. Yes, I think now it's almost repetitive. So we'll move to the next question. Okay, we'll move to the next question. Yeah. So what is the lake for? So what do you think? Who is the lake for? It's for us, it's for people, it's for the neighborhood, it's for the people who are living around the lakes, who are having dependency on the livelihoods. So what do you think the lake has a function for? So these are also the question which Mansee Bal also wanted to ask. So I'm also asking behalf of her that we want to know how people think. What is who uses the lake and who is the lake for? Like for all living organisms, specifically some lakes for urban functions, some for rural functions. So what is the idea what you have? Why do we need lakes? Who is the lake for? Groundwater rejuvenation, living organisms. Right. People are still responding. And we'll quickly go to the next round of question to the Professor Mansee Bal on these ideas, how people are responding. Yes.
I'm very interested to see that people are not writing it is for humans. Well,
Yes,
okay,
now we
humans
have.
are for all, they come under all living organisms. Very good.
Yes.
Actually, I will have a follow-up question then telling other things.
Yes, for all humans and components of ecosystem. Citizens enjoy for recreation. That is also interesting. Okay. Celebration of natural environment, communities. So we see that there are a lot of actors and beneficiaries coming up, humans, communities, and for purpose also. Recreation, celebration, rejuvenation, economic activity, livelihoods. Yes, so there are so many functions attached to the lake that we also see from our audience. Yes, that aquatic life and marine mammals require for survival. Yes. Interesting. It's too much to ask for, don't you think, from the lake?
Poor lake. Poor
Everyone.
lake.
Well, this is a very general. Everyone. Yes. It's lake for is everyone. Yes. Yeah. We wait for a couple of seconds and then. Yeah.
I
So
will
then
request Akshay that you ask all the questions and then I take all the 3 sections together because we will save on time in switching the screens.
Okay, great, great. So we just gather from the audience.
Yes,
some
I'm
basic
writing the
ideas.
notes. I'm writing
Yes.
the notes.
and then we can, yes, and then we can give the floor over to you.
Sure.
So we build a collective knowledge of what we think about lakes. It's not for humans, preserve biodiversities. Okay, we already see some contradictions in this, and that was the purpose also. Reflection of living organism, preserve biodiversity and natural habitat. Yes. Okay, so then I can move to the next question, and I hope Mansee that you are taking notes that there are so many variety, diverse ideas.
Yes.
For
as expected. So it's good.
Yeah. So now I'll move to the next question, which is also about the lakes, but it's part one, which is like giving it more deeper understanding about. Now we already know who is the lake for, and what we know also the definition what we have from our understanding. But now I want to ask you that what are the words which you associate our relationship with urban lakes? So what is the word that directly comes to your mind? Like when we say urban lakes, you must have been living around in a neighborhood where you have lakes close by. And what is it that you relate to these lakes?
The Menti code has changed, so maybe you have to
Yes.
type it again.
Yes,
Put it in
I'll
there.
type it again. Yes. So for all three sections, there will be different codes. So I'm sorry about that because we don't have the proprietary version still for this. So we are making it for free use. Yeah, we'll wait for a couple of seconds when people to enter the codes. Yeah. It seems like there's a lot of work at times, but it is just to be intended to make it interesting so that the users also, the audience also participates in the discussion.
That also brings the aspect of urban commons, no, water commons. Who is this lake for? So good for us.
It takes a little bit of a time, but I hope that it makes the discussion interesting, you know, to also ask the audience and build upon the common knowledge that we have. Groundwater sewage. Okay. Need to rejuvenate.
We are getting a
Pollution.
word cloud. Nice.
Yes, lost value. Okay. Now we are getting into more perception based, that step by step we also know that, okay, how people, this a cloud is like the words associated with most people, adding the same word will make it bigger. So we also have the pollution is like the concern what we're seeing, that it also depends on how, from where and how the audience is looking at. So pollution is what a lot of people are writing. Pressure of recreation. Yes. Need to rejuvenate. So there is a sense of urgency, and there is a sense of the status of the lake also that we see around, that it's polluted, it needs something must be done around it. And we also see some functions attached to it. It's a sewage, commons, surroundings, retreat, tranquility. So there is so much of a human emotional association around the lakes that we see. Pressure, yes. Okay. Ecological balance, shared resource, water, of course, cost value, commons, tranquility. Yeah. We wait for a couple of seconds and then move forward. Okay. Walking space. Yeah, that's an interesting one. It's part of the recreation, which is very popular. Walking space. Yes. Okay, then I think we should move to the next question.
Yes.
We're having.
Yeah.
Okay. So I hope the results will be generated, and I can also share it with you later. So you don't have to take the screenshots as of now. So.
No, I'm curious. What is the next question coming?
Now, this is a bit of a more deeper question, and this is the word which I have also anticipated. So now from these words, I would request the audience to rank the words which they said already. So this sort of is sort of an importance, weighted importance of what should be the functions of the lake according to you. And we already saw these words coming up before in the questions, that a lot of people think that it should be for ground recharge, for climate control in the neighborhood, recreation, aesthetics and beautification, harvesting, flood control and restoration. So let us see how the audience weigh in the percentages. For water quality safe life, it will take a little bit of a time, but it will be an interesting results to see that how people see that what should be the function of the lakes. Because
very interesting way to engage people. And I hope our participants are enjoying this engagement.
Yes, I hope it's not boring, because it takes a lot of work from the audience side, but it's just on the phone. So, I mean, we use our phone, so it should not be that much of a trouble. Okay, now, as of now, what you see is that ecosystem restoration, lake ecosystem restoration is okay. Now it's also changing, but yeah, I mean, groundwater recharge is very popular, and we also see a lot of activities done around the lakes to recharge, installing piezometers in the lakes and pitching the lake, desilting the lake for groundwater recharge. It is interesting to see that in spite of saying a lot of people like recreation and aesthetic beauty, we have people weighing in less on the recreation and aesthetics and beautification.
This is a checks and balance, huh?
Yes. Okay. So I think we have reached like the 9 maximum number who responded also earlier. So yes, so this is what we see, that the groundwater recharge. So we have some function already associated with urban lakes, that it should be provisioned for groundwater recharge. And this also comes from the crisis that we're also facing of water security, that these ideas emerge from these visions of what we should do for the lakes. Harvesting is also from the top, it's harvesting and water harvesting and ecosystem restoration. And in further part of the session, we shall ask these questions about restoration, harvesting, and groundwater that we do, and what we should not do to ensure these functions. Okay, so this was the first part, dealt with what we know about these lakes, what we have some association about these lakes, and what are the functions that we think we should associate with these lakes. And coming to the second part of it, so we are building knowledge, you know, in the presentation, we are trying to build the knowledge so that we can ask the final questionnaire to Mansee Bal. So this is part 2. And now we say that since we have functions associated with lakes, I want to have your opinion about how much that it is humans and cities depend on lakes. We already know that groundwater recharge and water harvesting weighed in more, but there are other aspects of it that we are dependent on the lakes, like climate and resilience, economy and livelihood, recreation and urban services. So I want to ask your opinion about this. Is a different presentation, so I would copy the link again. Sorry about this, but we are trying to make the most from the free resources. I know that it's a bit of a frustrating to write the codes all over it again, but I hope you can manage. Yes. So now we have starting to get responses. Climate and resilience. Urban services. Okay. Urban services, meaning the intention about this is like we put groundwater recharge, flood control, stormwater connections to this lake. We make lakes as detention ponds. We use lakes as a drinking water resource. We have so much urban functions associated with the lakes. A lot of theories also develop around it, like thinking it as a sponge. Interesting. Now the recreation aspect has like almost like negligible, disappeared. We become more responsible we're trying to also, you know, make some tricks with these questions also. Yes. 0. It is very interesting to see that nobody thinks that we don't depend on lakes for recreation, but what we see in different parts of, especially the lakes in Ahmedabad or other parts, that lakes are also very much utilized and developed for the recreation. So, I mean, as a citizens, we don't need lakes for recreation. That means great. But I
Keep my
would
life
keep
easy,
this.
by the way, huh?
I'll keep this discussion for Professor Mansee Bal to take it up on this later. Yeah. Okay. So now I would like to move on to the next question. With the same code, you can go. Yes. Now what we see that this is not happening. We are dependent on urban services. We know that what is the climate crisis and the resilience theories around it, but we are not able to effectively do something about it. So what do you think? What is important if we want to do something about the lakes and we consider it as commons? Collective action or inclusion of diverse actors? Because lakes, especially in Indian context, there are so many people who use lakes, who are associated with lakes. The local people, the people who depend their livelihood on the lakes for fishing, or near residents nearby because of the pollution, because of the health issues around these lakes. Because there is always this trade-off between inclusion of as many diverse actors as possible and the actions also which depend on these actors. But the action can be also by NGO or some activist group who are collected not from the region, but from different parts of India or academia. They can also bring collective action on the lakes. But the diverse actor inclusion is also like talking to the people who are living around the lake, who are associated with these lakes. So I think, yeah, now this is also like a consensus that of our audience, that inclusion of diverse actors is what is important for in order to do something for the lakes. Yeah, I hope Mansee Bal, you are taking notes on this, and we can build on this. So what we'll do is that we move for all the questionnaire, and then we'll give floor to Mansee Bal. Yeah. And then we now enter the final part of our section. Put that into the chat. Yeah. So lake as for commons or user groups, heterogeneous user groups, as you already said, that diverse user groups and actors are important. So if we consider lake as commons, is it for the heterogeneous diverse group around the lakes or specific communities that depend on the lakes? And the communities, by that communities may also mean NGOs and communities living around the lake, or diverse group like simple citizens like people who are living around the lakes, who has some stake in their daily lives routine. Okay. Or the lakes should be given as a cooperative structure where everybody has a say in it, what should be done and how we should manage the lake, and there is a trust around it, and there is somebody who is a paralegal structure who also works along with this. So yes, we have no support for making lakes as a cooperative structure. Interesting. So most of our audience is for lake as for commons, and that is also going to be discussed later. Yes, I think we have most of the audience responded. We'll move to the final question. Yes, finally, from this, as when we consider lakes as commons, and then there's a whole pool of actors who are involved with this within this common. So which urban lake user or actor should have more influence? Who do you think that can make a lot of difference in making lakes as commons, or trying to preserve these lakes, or to do something about these lakes? So this brings us to the final question. Yes. Because there is a lot of things like scientific understanding of the lakes, the collective action of the communities, the youth, students, journalists, reporting of what is the status of the lake, environmental activities to do and act, what should be done about this lake in terms of advocacy. The NGT is also involved in the tribunal, and the local politicians, the corporators that that are to represent us from that ward or region or municipal council. And we also seen a lot of NGOs working independently for the lakes. And there is also multinational banks like World Bank, ADB funding these lakes, which is also empowering the local actors to do and invest on the restoration projects around the lakes. But so far, what we see is the citizen, community, and direct user groups should have the most influence.
Interesting. Very interesting.
Great. I think we have achieved our maximum response target of 9 people, 9 responses. Then, okay, so this brings us to the end of our interactive session about these questions. Sorry if it was too much in such a short time, but now I would like to reflect upon this with opening a discussion with Professor Mansee Bal, that I also shared this question to her, and now she also has the response from the audience, and let's see what she has to hear from about these questions and what answer she would have, what she thinks about all these questions. Thank you, Mansee Bal. Yeah, and thank you, Megha. Over to you. Shall stop the screen.
Thank you, Akshay, and thanks all of you for participating in the questionnaire. And I'm also very proud that my student can showcase what we all should be doing and also take you through what we are going to discuss. So what I'm going to do now is share my screen and also take you through the don'ts of what we discussed now. I have all your major responses in my notebook, so I'm going to respond accordingly, and I was anticipating the results which have actually come out. So it's not surprising the way we have given the options. Another thing which happened very good is actually because of this interactive session, I have also some very good participants here who actually are attending, especially to listen to me. So I'm grateful to all of them who have come here today to listen to me. So please bear with me. I'm going to take you through responses from my end of the very same points which you were discussing here. So what do you see right now on the screen? Do you see my screen? No?
Yep. Yep, calendar.
No.
Oh, no, we don't.
You don't see it? Oh.
We
were able to see Mansee. It just, it came and went. Yes. Almost like urban lakes.
Yes. Do you see now? Because
yes.
I don't see whether you're seeing or not.
Yeah, we can see.
Yes.
Okay, I am not seeing whether you are seeing or not. Is it visible?
Yes.
Yes.
It's full screen.
Okay. Okay, so you see not doing is also doing. That's my point. Okay.
Yes.
The best point.
Thank you. Okay, so I start with this premise that not doing is also doing, and that's the lecture which I'm talking about, what not to do in urban lakes or lakes for that matter. The premise also sets the point that there must be some do nots when we have so many do's. You know, every time we learn in the school, whatever we see in the DPRs of lake projects and all, there are a lot of do's. There are never many undo's or do not do's. So I mean, last 5 years, I'm trying to figure out few things which we should not be doing. And you all have also answered that, by the way. Is it a lake for me or for all of us? And we saw that most of you actually wrote that it is for all of us. But then how come when we see lake projects, the whole focus is on humans for lakes? We also saw that you actually did not choose recreation as a priority, but when we see lake projects, we see that recreation becomes the topmost priority of lake developments. And that brings me to my last premise based on which I'm going to talk today is my right to a lake as a citizen of a society, but at the same time, my duty towards the lake, which is also very well covered in the Mentimeter, where you were actually talking about as lake as a commons, and also looking at citizens' participation is at the center of all this discussion. So as I mentioned, when we talk about development, there are a lot of do's. What I wish to talk about is that we also need to discuss undo's, redo's, and not to do's. And I'm today focusing on not to do. At some other moment, I will definitely like to focus on undo and redo, because I think the future lies in undoing a lot of things which we are doing wrongly today. So as you will be seeing in your own city, the lake development model, where doing is overrated. And I'm giving example from just 2 cities today, one city and one state. This is Ajmer, Anna Sagar, and I'm just making a mockery of the way we destroy the ecology to show ecology. And recently I learned that an orchard was cut through to make a forest. And I don't know how do we design and decide those things. Because in this process of making exclusive for some people, we are actually excluding a lot, including the biodiversity which you selected as your core, stakeholder of the lake. We also see the common our typical lake development model across the country now. This is from my state, the Gujarat model, where predominantly lake development is a land development model. And this is where we need to start asking, and you also, when you were entering Mentimeter questions, you were actually talking about restoration of a natural system or a lake or a water body. Then when we do this kind of development model, we need to really question whether it is a right doing or not right doing. So what I am doing these days is actually writing a short manuscript on not doing things. I'm going to skip it through because I'm going to take you through some of them. These are over 50 plus not doings. And I'm going to take your questions on not doings if you have any, but taking through the Mentimeter 3-phase part, I'm going to now take you through planning as in Imagineering, how through planning, we are actually doing a lot of wrong things which we should not be doing. So one of the important things which we should not do is doctor the very idea of lake. There is no issue in showing a water-filled lake as a good lake. But I have serious problems when even experts and many lake developers in the country at this point in time are showing a dry lake as a bad lake, or showing apathy or showing pity to a dry lake. We need to understand that dry lake is also a lake, and it is equally rich ecosystem, because in this process of having water all over the lake all the year round, we are actually spoiling the ecosystem of the lake. Most of the lakes in this country must dry. So my point is that do not doctor an image of a lake that a lake is filled with water all the time. No, that is wrong. Do not give us a dream of an engineered system of a natural ecosystem. So I'm showing example from my own city where these 2 pictures are taken from the airport by me, and the way we are trying to show how we have developed as a society, and I have serious questions on it. I do not have question on the bottom image if you want to show something very nice, but do not demean the natural ecosystem as something which was wrong. This is wrong. This is definitely wrong. So I will say, do not give false dreams in the name of development. Then do not duplicate. Definitely not duplicate, particularly not understanding the science of water conservation. When we see the model today in lake development all over the country, there are 2 prominent things. Hardscape all over the edge, And then most of the people are, I don't know why they are so fond of making a circular lake. I have no clue, but you may ask your own designers and policymakers and politicians and even administrators. Do not copy, please, because we are not understanding where we copy from these tanks, which were traditional water harvesting systems. We forget the fact, and I'm giving example from my own city where we have two traditional historic tanks. We forget the fact that both these tanks had more than 10 to 25 times bigger lake to feed this tank. So now when we are making these tanks, whether circular or rectangular, in the modern time, we do not have those big lakes which are going to feed those tanks. So please do not duplicate that model of hardscaping. We have already asked this question, and I'm very happy that you could make that distinction. But what is important to understand here is that if our details and projects are not making this distinction, we are doing a blunder. So when we are actually going around all over the country talking about catch the rain and digging the ponds and making them lakes, we are already tempering the ecosystem of the water body, because you yourself mentioned that wetlands, ponds, and lakes are different. So how on earth we are changing the pond ecosystem to a lake ecosystem when we know a pond ecosystem is a richer ecosystem, and we want to talk about a water body restoration. So please do not make lakes in the country. Let them remain as ponds and wetlands. That will be my request. Do not make lakes. Then another thing which we are really doing very, very wrongly, which we should not do, is designating lake by the amount of water spread. And this is where, when I was talking about lake development as a land development, I can go a step further and talk about that actually a lake lost is a land grabbed or gained. And this is exactly what is happening. And a classic example is the first time when we had our National Lake Conservation Plan in the country, Ahmedabad lost 510 lakes in its administrative area. How? It is because of the definition of designating a lake. We lost it. I'm just showing a little map from my own neighborhood where we lost 2 of them during the policy. And now we are going to lose 1 of them because of the metro station coming. So we need to understand which one are the lakes and why are we unable to appreciate the shallow lakes. And this is where the definition of lakes and ponds come very handy. The other thing which we should not be doing, and we are very happily doing, is delineation of the water body or delineation of the lake. You will notice that with every lake development project in the country, the water spread area is reducing. But at the same time, you will find designers and administrators talking about that water quantity is same, because they are digging the water bodies and trying to compensate the quantity by increasing the depth. It's a double loss. Loss of the water spread area and also loss of the ecosystem. It is also another form of land grabbing, by the way. And that's where I will say, do not delineate a lake by doing a lake development. If you want to do lake development, then try to increase the area of the lake. I don't know how. You have to find out a way. If you know to decrease the area, you should also know to increase the area of the water body. So please do not delineate. What is more ironic is that the area of the lake on the administrative will be still considered the outer, whereas the water is actually the inner line of the lake. So this is somewhere we are trying to cheat ourselves. We should not be doing it. That goes further in the higher scale, which I am going to skip today's today's conversation. When we talk about lake development, we often focus on the lake per se, where we are not focusing on the lake catchment, and Udaipur, Bangalore, Hyderabad, Ahmedabad, all are classic examples of it. So actually lake restoration and development lies in the neighborhood planning scale, where we have to focus more on the restoration and health of the surrounding areas than the lake itself. Do not desilt, dredge, and deepening unscientifically, which is what happens today. And I'm showing example from one of the lakes which I walk every year with some people of the city. Today, this month also, I'm going to walk this lake. By digging and by dredging and desilting, we are actually deepening the water bodies, And as I mentioned, it is the biggest mistake which we are doing at this moment in the name of lake development, in the name of catch the rain. What I would like to really go to the next phase from here is not doing is crucial, because we are actually creating water problems. We are manipulating water problems, and also we are actually strengthening the water problems more by doing more wrong things. So if we really want to do some things right, then stop wasting water by doing all the other things, than actually getting into the lake and doing something. So if you really want to save the lake, just don't work on the lake. You have to spend the money on the surrounding areas which are causing the lake the damage or the pollution. And a classic example is groundwater, by the way. You had the second round, and it was very interesting to see when people were talking about what kind of issues and what kind of services, what kind of functions you draw from the lake. We tend to devalue the other values, where we always value the recreation aspect, but we saw in the Mentimeter today that people did write in the cloud, but when we had to rate them, people actually rated the recreation as the least. We have to accept that wastewater itself is a value. If squatting is happening, that itself is a value. That itself is an ecosystem service. If we are dumping waste, that is also a value which is ascribed to the water body. It is now upon us, what do we want to value and what do we not want to value? In my opinion, all the four at the bottom are equally harmless. So I will not really suggest any kind of lake development to be better off than dumping waste, than dumping wastewater, and then squatting. So for my study, for me, all the four are same. Of course, then we should aim for the top picture, as I'm showing, as a natural ecosystem as much possible. Other thing which we should not play is, when there is a distress, we should not play with lake development for desire. You all appreciate a good lake, I understand and I respect that, but come on, all these lakes are, water in the lakes are coming at a cost of the distress which is in the city. Half of the population is suffering from water problems, including water epidemics and crises. At that time, if we are spending crores and crores of rupees and only making pathways for me and my dog, I think it is wrong. We should not do that. And that also applies to all kinds of water aesthetics, including pools, fountains, and you just name it. I'm really doing this moral questioning to us when we talk about water systems. So this is basically a spectrum. Often when we are doing lake development, we are seeing it in silo. We forget that we have to link it with other water systems. So do not de-link other water systems from the lake. It cannot stand by itself. If the drains are dirty, if the wastewater is not treated properly, the lake itself is unhealthy. This we have to understand very clearly. We cannot have a good lake by having bad drains and bad treatment. It is as simple as that. Do not discriminate. You all also mentioned that it is for everyone and all. Now I would request you to go to your city and look at the document of lake development and find how much money we spend on ensuring that there is a biodiversity, vis-a-vis how much money we spend on our pathways and on our lighting and on our all kinds of beautiful exotic plants and so on and so forth. So this discrimination does not end with other beings, by the way. The discrimination goes further even within the human beings, where we see that exclusive projects of lake development already debars or excludes a lot of poor people to have access to the water body. So one is the discrimination between other species, but also between us. What I will try to now say is that this doctoring and doling of all this money into development is the biggest problem at this moment in time, because all this thing is not helping us restore the ecosystem, which we all agree that lake is an ecosystem, or lake has other beings to survive or other stakeholders. So I will say, do not doctor the need to human needs and dole all the money to human needs again, or for development of human beings, or particularly economic development. When we talk about lake development, mind you, the property around it also raises, property value around it also raises by 10 to 15 times. So it is also factoring into lake development when we talk about these things, but at the cost of all these creatures who actually lay their life for our economic development. So what you can do, there are very simple things, and I'm giving example from my students' work who actually questioned that how do we draw these revenue lines on water bodies? Where is the edge of the water body? Because edge is the most vulnerable part of the water body. So do not draw or manipulate the water edge. And this is very important because all the development when we talk about lake happens on the edge, not always on the lake, because there are some lakes where islands are also made because it is dug, there is extra soil, then the islands are produced. And I will have my serious questions on that. So I am taking from 2 references. So do not draw groundwater to fill lakes. This is the biggest crime at this moment happening in the country, because somehow the local authorities feel that they are obliged to have water in the lakes. Somehow the local people think that they want to see water all around the year. And that's why I mentioned in the beginning that do not doctor the image of the lake. To have water in the lake has become like an obligation for us, which is wrong. We should not do that. And we should not draw groundwater to fill the lake. We should actually focus more on stopping the discharge of wastewater into the lake. I will say this again, you all know this, but I want to bring your notice to the funding pattern of it. The amount of money which is spent on developing the lake edge, I will suggest that bring that money to actually helping the local stakeholders, including industries, including domestic households, to really change their behavior and lifestyle to discharge better wastewater or lesser, strong wastewater or less wastewater. So what I'm trying to hint you is that actually water management is social management. So why are we spending more money on water and not spending more money on social management? We want to just avoid. Giving a very simple example, what can be done? Do not put lighting in lake projects, in lake gardens. First of all, do not make gardens around the lakes. Why do we want to walk around the lakes? Why do we want to go to the lakes when we have 95 to 97% of the city's land for us? Can we not leave the 3%, 4% land of water for other creatures? This is the severest question I have in my mind time and again when we talk about water developments. So this is just simple example that if you really want good for the other beings around the lake, do not put lights, because flowers bloom in the night, fish and birds bloom in the night, flowers bloom in the early morning. So do not go there. Do not walk to the lake in the early morning and after it is dark. Let them live peacefully. These are just suggestions. Do not drum sounds. I see now in the lake development plans, they are putting music and all kinds of religious songs are coming up and all. All other beings are sensitive to mechanical sounds. So these are very, very sensitive things. I know people will not really give a lot of weightage to these things, but just to give an example, I can go on this. Coming to the water commons part of it, who should be managing it and how it should be managing it, and that question was already asked to you, and who is the decision maker and who is the doer in this. And we have to stop letting the top-down decision on urban lakes. And there are examples, I'm going to show you that also. So if we all are stakeholders, are we doing enough? This is what we have to ask ourselves. I think we are not doing enough. And since we are not doing enough, there are only a handful of people who are not water expert, including those sitting in the office and those sitting in the consultancy, are taking charge, and they are also basically going through this dilemma between conservation and development. While they intend to do conservation, they end up doing development of the lakes. And this is where education and knowledge about water bodies is very, very crucial. I keep saying that do not learn by doing, please learn before doing. And that is very, very important. And this is a classic example for me. What happens in this process is that we actually end up creating more waste. More we develop around the lake, more we create either wastewater or building waste. So if you do not know that, then you should also just put it in your statistics and all. 30 to 40% of the solid waste also gets into these water bodies and are generated by doing these developments around the water bodies. So for me, particularly from dumping to the development, I see they are similar tragedies. I really don't see any difference, whether there is a solid waste dumped or wastewater dumped, or there is a development done around the lakes. This is very, very personal view, but we can sit some other time and do the scientific dissection of it. So we have to take this ownership that how are we going to develop? My question is on the development itself. And as I mentioned that for me, dumping to developing is same. It's really doing the same damage. So do not deceive us in the name of development by and just doing beautification. This is like a dissection which I was talking about, showing you very briefly of Baroda. The brutality to beautify is why, how can we ignore as citizens? This is Sursagar Lake, natural lake. 1/3 of the lake is lost, done by well-known designers, decided by well-known local authorities, and then lost more than 1,000 years old people and banyan trees, just to develop a lake where we can walk and talk and walk our dog and do all kinds of morning recreation. I think I would like to object that and do not do that. How do you do that? Very simply, actually, because we're talking about stakeholders. Please do not depute engineers only for the lake project. There is no problem with having engineers, but also have other specialization people also, like hydrologist, ichthyologist, ornithologist, and you can just keep naming it. Definitely do not hire only architects and and do not leave it to the politician's dream. 99% politicians want an island in the lake, which is again another big problem. So just to give you this overview, that when you are really doing things by what you have learned only, there we also require a lot of unlearning, lot of relearning and learning from others, which is not happening at this moment in the lake development. So because a lot of questions come on not to do, I only raised actually 15 points out of more than 50 points I have identified. I would like to quickly take you through a couple of slides on what to do in not doing. And there are set examples also around the country. Last year, one of my intern did a study, Nishant Saxena. We identified more than 75 lakes where youth have come forward and done the projects with 1/10 the budget which local authorities assign for a lake development. And they have done a lot of things which I'm talking about in this. And I would like to thank them that they have taken the initiative against citizens, bottom up. They took the question, the problem in their hand, and they changed the face with 1/10, less than 1/10 of the price, and they continue to do that. And this is where we need to understand that by not favoring development, it does not mean that I am against development. I am against the development that divides human from nature, humans to humans, that dares to think that economic and bioecology, that dumps common sense, science and conscience. A lot of things are happening because they have to just do it. Just do it is a big problem at this moment in lake development and for other developments as well. So this decision to design to conserve is actually lying between the spectrum of distress and desire, which needs balancing. So for example, I already raised this question in terms of decision. If Ahmedabad has only 122 lakes, which cover only 3% of the total land mass, can we not leave them on their own? On their own, I mean conserve them. And I will also advocate that conservation also requires people, also requires money, also requires technology. But development also does that, but it is in the wrong direction. So if we cannot manage these lakes, only a few of them left now, we can actually focus and divert all our funds on not damaging them. And that's where I meant, can we put our money in stopping the pollution, letting the treatment happen better, reducing the domestic waste, which is the invisible criminal, by the way, in all the lake projects. So to really take you through the misunderstanding we have about the lake, I think we should not misunderstand the lake. We should better understand the society. Lake is not suffering. Society is suffering, and lake is an impact of it. Society is the cause and lake is the effect of it. So I give a very simple example. Pollution is the cause, polluted is the effect. So when we are seeing a lake is suffering, we actually have to see that something is coming out of my house and going to the lake. So the problem is in my house. Problem is in my industry, not in the lake. It is suffering because of my actions. This is where the diversion or a funding reallocation has to really happen. Because when we treat a lake, we actually do a cure project. We do not do a prevent project. And this is also the nexus which you need to understand, that local authorities have to continuously do something. And that means they're just cleaning the lake all the time and not really investing money or sharing the funds with the society to change their behavior, you know. And this is very, very disheartening, because society is also not coming forward and keeping the responsibility to the local authority. So this is where we need to not misunderstand the lake, but understand the society better. We should not desire not to develop, but also to conserve. And this is where our roles comes into picture. If we wait for the government, it is too late. If we act as individuals, it is too little. And you had a question on collective action, by the way. If we act as communities, it might be just enough. And there are good examples for it. What can you do when you act as community? First thing first, do not concretize the edge. Very, very important. Do not dig the water body. And these are all do nots, but you have to do it, you know. So embrace the wilderness. If anything is growing in nature by itself, you have to change your specs, change your glasses to appreciate it, and not think that, oh, this is a wild grass or wild growth and I should clean it up and make new plants. That is wrong. We should not do that. When we are talking about development, we should not really go ahead and do the managing of the lake. We should spend the money on managing the society, as I have been hammering from the start of my slide. What we can do, very, very simple thing, we can at least start changing our premise, perception and preference of the lake, which we tried, by the way, through the Mentimeter game today, which we did, because we need to change our perception of conservation and development. Because when policy papers are written, they are written for conservation. When the projects are drafted and done on the ground, they are done for development. We need to understand the difference here. Conservation is conservation, development is development. And the least local authorities and you can do is redesignate and redesign the lakes, or just clean the drains, redesignate and redesign the drains. Just clean the drains around in your neighborhood with the community. You really don't need to clean the lake. The lake will be automatically clean. So it is more about our less understanding about the lakes, which we think lake is suffering, but actually we are making it suffer. So we have to change ourselves. This is an example from one of my friend from Hyderabad, where she has actually engaged in a lot of lake conservations. I want to stress on the word conservation. And she is doing many of them without really tampering the lake ecology, without doing any other things. And 1/10 of the price. Another guy from Bangalore, Anand Malligad, you will also see him doing a lot of these activities. I'm giving 2 examples only from the 75 youth we have identified from the country who have taken things on their hand as citizens collective, and they are changing the way lake developments are happening. So what I will do, I will stop here and just advise you to do less, because when we are doing more, this is the biggest problem we are actually doing to the lake. Just do less. Just keep your conscience and common sense. And you really fared very well in your Mentimeter. We have to follow the Mentimeter, what you opted for. And I'm grateful to all my students who constantly help me learn, and all my stakeholders who help me walk through and actually teach me what we should not be doing. So I will stop here and take your questions if you have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mansee, for this thought-provoking presentation. So I would start with the audience. If anybody has a question, they can raise hand and we can ask question.
Good. Okay, Mary. Hi, Mary. Please unmute yourself.
Sorry about that. I love the freedom of suggesting that we can not do, because we're always doing. And it's such a crazy making world. And the piece of not doing is beautiful. But at the same time, our lakes have been contaminated by these excess nutrients. And our challenge to process all of that. And the result is harmful algae blooms, the cyanobacteria. And some of the solutions proposed and seeing an impact around the globe are actually doing more to augment the lake's capabilities, specifically like adding enzymes or adding aeration capabilities. What would be your comment on that? And in fact, the leading cyanobacteria conference just announced this as a practice that could be a means to restore our lakes by helping them process this excess pollution or nutrients. So back to you.
Yeah, thank you, Mary. We have to do these things, but the thing is, all of us who are working on the lakes, we do realize that we cannot get into everybody's house and change their behavior of producing waste. So we end up actually cleaning the lakes all the time, which is a never-ending process. So unless and until we spend our resources, both funding, technical, technological, social resources, to change people's behavior, and Lake Biwa is a classic example from Japan, where people living around in the lake and the catchment, they changed their behavior of bathing, they changed their behavior of soaping, they changed their behavior of, the way they use water. And I mean, it is not going to happen overnight, but my point is that you can continuously keep cleaning the water bodies, but it's a never ending process. If you really want to go the preventive way, maybe we have to take a step back and spend the same money, at least half the money in social behavioral change and half the money in cleaning the lake, and not spend all the money cleaning the lake itself, because it is never going to be clean ever. Because tomorrow again, I'm going to pollute the lake, and tomorrow you as a local authority have to clean the lake. So my point is, it's do not literally not clean the lake, but if you clean the lake today, please do it, but then ensure tomorrow it is not polluted again. How do we do that? It goes back to my house and your house. What are we discharging from my house? So I think when I look in India, the way our funding distribution is, we hardly have 2 to 5% for social awareness. And I will advocate for 50 to 60% for social awareness and changing social behavior to the extent of giving people the right soap in their hand, than actually putting the chemical in the lake, than actually putting the chemical in the river. That is my point. But the problem is, local authority does not want to give away the money which they have in their hand. They do not want to distribute the money with the citizens. And Netherlands and Japan shows the example, how can you distribute the money among citizens and make citizens partner in taking care of the water bodies. Classic examples are there.
Right.
Yeah. Thank you.
Right. Very good. Thank you. Great to see everyone.
Yeah, same here.
Thank you, Mary. I see Fauzia has a question. Yes, go ahead, Fauzia.
Yeah, thank you, Mansee. With all the that you have been doing, demystifying as to what, how we should be really managing our lakes. Brilliant, I think, presentation. Very simple and I think very easy to understand also. My question, Mansee, again, is as simple as you had made the presentation today, that we are talking about losing hundreds of lakes. Like just now you talked about Ahmedabad and many of our cities for that matter, whether it's Hyderabad or Bangalore or across even here in Gurgaon, or many of our cities, we are losing lakes very fast. Lakes or johars. So again, that was also interesting when you said we need to distinguish between lakes and ponds and johars. And so these are all very different traditional structures and not put them into one basket. Now, when we are looking at reviving these, so what would be your suggestion, given that all the natural hydrological channels, and all the development that we have done around the lake has resulted in most of them drying up? So what would be your suggestion that when we are looking at sort of reviving our lakes by doing less, but what is the least amount of effort that we need to really put in from our sides to ensure that we at least give some life to these lakes.
Yeah, thank you, Fazia. When you say our side, there are 2 hours. One is at the domestic household, and one is the local authorities plus consultants and the contractors and everything. So at local household, I think we have to be first aware. Many people don't even know that they have lakes in their neighborhood. And I think we have to change our style of water discharge, change our water wastewater production to be more simple. We have to change not only in quantity, but also the quality of wastewater. For example, if we are using wastewater, water in our washing machine and everything and kitchen, we are using bioenzyme, the wastewater is actually a good wastewater. It is not a wastewater anymore. It's a water which the lake and the canal or the drain would like to be happy to receive. So it is chemical. So if we can go for a social movement for chemical-free life at a household level is one thing, but at a consultancy, a consultant and project developers and local authority level, the least we can do is actually start decentralized treatment of the pollution. If we do not allow pollutants to enter of course, we have to clean it once or twice or 1 year or 2 years, but then we have to ensure that the pollution is not going into the lake. Otherwise, it's a chicken and egg situation, So, unfortunately, if you look at the funding pattern, there is less money spent on stopping the pollution and more money spent on cleaning the pollution. This was the point I was trying to make.
Thanks, Mansee. Yeah, you're absolutely right. There's no point we keep doing, at end of the point solution, and we don't bother about from where it is being generated. I think
domestic waste is a bigger problem. We all always think that industrial waste is a problem, but actually domestic waste is a bigger problem than industrial waste, because local authorities, implementation authorities, pollution authorities cannot reach domestic households. They can always find an industry, but they cannot find us. This is where we have a social responsibility as citizens, commons, all those Mentimeter questions. We have to change.
Absolutely, I agree with you. And also we have the responsibility to ensure that whatever regulations, are there, that they are being enforced properly also.
Yes.
So while, the local authorities can find the industries, but what we are actually seeing is that there is a very, very weak enforcement of our regulations. So
absolutely,
they are not doing it. Even NGT, despite NGT also, we are still struggling. And as the other day I saw that even in the Ganga in Varanasi also, there's a canal that is completely taking waste water into the Ganges as well.
Assi river is almost dead now.
Yes. So that's unfortunate. Yeah.
The point is here that we can still go after the industries. But if we have not identified domestic wastewater as a problem, we have still not addressed half the problem of the lakes and water bodies. And
absolutely. And most of the nutrients that we are talking about, in fact, they are actually from the domestic waste that goes into the water, and that perhaps leads to this algal bloom and water hyacinth. And if you're not able to stop the domestic waste, I think we can never curb the problem of algal bloom and water hyacinth in our lakes.
Yeah. Any questions?
Thank you, Fauzia. Okay, so meanwhile, we will wait for the questions, but I have my questions too. So please. Can I go ahead?
Go ahead.
So I agree with you, Mansee, that there has to be a collective action, and it is clear the way you have identified what it is very important to make this distinction, because when we say commons, everybody has a diverse visions about what they should do for the lakes and what they should not do in the lakes. And if you go and ask, and we study the citizens' perspective who are living close to the lakes, they will also have certain visions about because of the pollution, government is not doing something, we should do something like the beautification where people can walk. Some people would have visions about making it a recreational body. Some people would have visions about how to restore the body with different kinds of different species, that we can see the diversity also of the different plant species and tree species in a way to manicure the lake as per the beautification or the nature they want to be with. Like, so it will be not a natural environment, but a manicured environment for them to appreciate nature in their own neighborhood. So we see these sort of visions around this lake, and of course they also want to push their agenda. So how do we navigate from these collective visions of what we should do about it or what we should not do about this lake? How do we go from this different diversity of visions?
It's a difficult thing to do, and it's a difficult question also for me to answer, because humans want to rule over every square inch of the land. And that's where I gave this example of Ahmedabad, and a moral question to all of us. If we want every square inch of the land to be lived by humans, that is unfair. Because if in a city like Ahmedabad, it's only 3% or 2% of water body, can we not leave it for them? So I'm actually talking, keep people away. I'm very consciously talking about keep people away. But having said that, I know many people will be really questioning that, because we are already perceiving lake as a public good for human consumption. And I have serious problems on that now, after working on it for 3 decades. And by the way, now in the country also, we are talking about urban forest. But then our notion of urban forest, garden, lakes is where we can go for recreate ourselves. So in a way, we are seeing ourselves to be so powerful or king type that we want to be amused by the birds, we want to be amused by the water. And I have a spiritual question and problem on that. I mean, right now. So if we really want to have a nature the way we want to appreciate nature, then the first unlearning we have to do is that then start appreciating wilderness. Start thinking that this is wilderness, this is biodiversity. I need not walk every square inch of the land on earth. Let other species live there. I can see it from distance and appreciate it. The first thing every architect, designer, and planner does is goes and raises off the site into and wants to see a blank slate and start designing with beautiful exotic trees. That is also done for lakes and all, that you want plants which you like to see. Why are palm growing in a very, very wet climate? Why are lakes really planted with trees from I don't know which country and where? Why do we do that? We should not be doing that. So if we have to start appreciating wilderness, we go to forest to see wilderness. Now we have an opportunity with 122 lakes in Ahmedabad where we can appreciate wilderness. These can be oxygen parks. Then we should not be greedy to really walk every square inch of it. We can leave it and be happy that we can have the bequest value, that there is a forest, there is a lake, let other species live there. Then we have to actually have a lake development proposal for other species, not for human beings. And this is where the whole dilemma of conservation and development comes into picture. Because lake development is for humans. It's not for any other beings. Even if it is for any other beings, it is like I will go and take my child to see that, there are zoos also in many parks and gardens. There are these moral questions. I mean, I'm just sharing my personal views, so don't take it very literally.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you for the answer. But I have a follow-up question also. If meanwhile nobody has a question, I can also ask this. Can I? Okay.
Sure.
Nobody has a question. So regarding about the conservation against the development, you said that, okay, the conservation should be more stressed upon. But then when the conservation approaches of how we should conserve this lake in terms of restoration projects and rejuvenation projects, a lot of global organizations and institutions also want to contribute under SDG goals and the Ramsar Convention. So we have certain global initiatives which are to be implemented at local level, and the local government is of course very happy because the funding is also flowing. And but what is also a trajectory that can develop is that a lake is restored, conserved, but it is to be used under touristic functions, that people go there, appreciate And then what happens in the trajectory is that they take a lot of loan to develop and maintain and study from the World Bank, and the local authority is burdened to generate revenue in order to repay the loans which they have taken by ADB, World Bank. So in Ahmedabad, you also are aware that a lot of lakes are developed by Asian development banks, and the local authorities are in a pressure to generate revenue. And they're also leasing out the reclaimed land to these private companies. So if conservation is also bringing the same ideas about tourism and just a different aspect, not if not development, then other aspects where to generate revenue, though, then in this scenario, even the conservation, yeah, we are in the same situation. So what is your
I
views on
mentioned
that?
this point, Akshay. I already mentioned this point that we intend conservation and we actually do development. You will find this very, very common phenomena across the world, where the intention is for conservation, but we have to understand that this because the collective action is happening between human beings. The participation is not by the other beings, so we are exploiting them. So we need to understand this fact that all this money has to be put for economy, for appropriating the water body to actually give more functions. You were also asking questions on function, where people did talk about ecosystem restoration and groundwater recharge as the highest points. So I mean, I can ask a counter question to people here or to you. When we talk about ecosystem restoration, then how come the money is not spent on ecosystem restoration? This money is spent on recreation. Similarly, how come when we are talking about putting a lake for groundwater recharge, how on earth even expert, highly educated people think of drawing groundwater to fill the lake, because they have to show to the people that the lake is filled with water, which means our perception of lake itself needs to be revised, needs to be rethought. And that's where I was saying that we have to really start appreciating wilderness. We have to start appreciating dry lake. First of all, start appreciating a dry lake, because this was a big scam where the wastewater could not be treated, and lake was seen as a as a masiha to receive all the wastewater. And this is where the changing phenomena of lake came in the country, where we saw that, oh, the lake is dry and it is not really healthy and blah blah blah. Now we can actually fill the lake and keep the lake water full for all the year round. Lakes are not supposed to be filled with water all the year round. So this change in perception is strategically done. It is politically done. It is so if we look at these big projects also, most of the lakes in Ahmedabad are done by loan. They are not done with citizens' participation, and that's why it is top down. And then if you put the money, and if the real estate in the surrounding also increases, you definitely want to get the money back. It's a simple investment. But what I was saying, from the examples which we have identified, more than 75 examples across the country, all youth-led lake development projects. They call it lake development projects, but they mean conservation. It's just the reverse. Please understand the fact. Here, big agencies are calling conservation projects and doing lake development projects. And here, bottom up, because they pick the word lake development, but they actually do conservation. And they are doing it 1/10, 1/20th of the price. So this whole economic model of lake development itself is a flaw. We really don't need money in the lake. We need money to make people aware. And this goes back to, where is the money spent? Is local authority willing to spend the money with the citizens? Like in Netherlands, you are living there. I have lived there in the past. We know every local authority is giving money to the neighborhood to maintain the neighborhood. And then annually they are checked whether they are maintaining their neighborhood or not. So something like this we have to evolve in the country as well. But right now, the local authorities do not trust the citizens. The citizens do not trust the government, thinking that all the money is being eaten up. So this relationship between government and citizens have to change. If that changes, the relationship with the funding agency will also change, by the way. Right now, the funding agency are enjoying the most, because loan is always good. Bank is always happy, as long as you take the loan.
Yes, I mean, I totally agree that that definition, again, as you started with, the definition means a lot how you define it. And it makes the whole trajectory in a different direction. But it was, yeah, it was really an eye-opening perspective from your side that how we can completely overturn the table and look and work as a youth. You can participate in the same process, but in a different from a different direction, like from the bottom up. But given to the constraints of the time, I would ask audience if they have any last closing questions, or else we can give floor to Megha for concluding the session. Yeah, I don't see any urgent questions. Yes, Megha, please, over to you.
Thank you, Akshay, and thank you, Mansee ma'am, for this enlightening session. And it was really a thought-provoking session where we have to actually look back at ourselves and our lifestyle, where we start questioning of how we are managing water and using water. So that was very insightful. I would really like to thank you for sharing your wisdom with us today as a speaker. And thank you, Akshay, for managing the session very so nicely and making it more interactive, because we never had audiences actually answer questions ever. So it was really nice to know what the audiences also perceive as lakes and their role in saving the lakes. So I would like to thank you both for this session, and we go ahead for the next session next Wednesday. The next session is on the decentralized wastewater management system. It's a two-part session, and it will be first part next Wednesday, and the next will be on the next Wednesday. We hope to see all of our audiences to be there on the next Wednesday at 5 p.m. the same time, and we'll be sharing more details on our social media. So please do follow that. And thank you all for being here today and participating in the questions that were shared. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Megha, and thanks, Anand.
Thank you, Megha. Thank you, Mansee. It was a very interesting session.
Yeah.
See you probably next week. Yes.
Sure,
Thank
see
you,
you
audience,
next
for
week. Bye-bye.
participating.